Good evening, everyone. I'm going to take on from where Mr. De Silva literally stopped. He talked about, why we cannot look at assessment as an aid to help children to learn. And that's exactly what I'm going to focus on, assessment for learning. Because we've heard a lot about formative assessments, we've heard about summative assessment, but what I'm just going to very, very briefly touch upon is that we need to plan assessment in order to help children learn. Teachers need to know what they want their children to learn, how they're going to learn, and then how are they going to assess them, and how is this assessment further going to help them to plan for the learning of the children and to help the children to do well. Now, if we think of our children as plants, summative assessments of the plants is a process of simply measuring them. The measurements might be interesting to compare and analyze, but in themselves they do not affect the growth of the plants. Formative assessment, on the other hand, is the gardening equivalent of feeding and watering the plants, directly affecting their growth. I'm not going to dwell on formative assessments or how they're going to help us, but what I'm going to go on straight away is to assessment for learning, because much has been said about assessment techniques in the classroom, and that's a very long subject anyway to deal with. So therefore I'll just miss a few of these slides and just very briefly touch upon assessment for learning, which actually considers where learners are with their learning, where they want to be, where they need to get to, and how do teachers help them to bridge the gap. So how do we do this? Now, assessment for learning actually aims to find out how much the learners know. So there's something called a need assessment that we need to do when children come to us right at the beginning of the class. As soon as we get them, we need to know what and how to access these children, and there could be various means to do that. Summative tests generally conducted at the end of the year or unit are useful in establishing a rank order of attainment or comparing results from year to year. But when we teach with assessment for learning, then we can focus on the learning rather than on the teaching, because it would include learners, everyone in a culture where we would expect high levels of achievements from every child, and that would lead on to what is known as a differential learning in the classroom itself. But for that we need to know our children well, and it is assessment for learning which will really make it happen. Assessment for learning will make our children feel special, it will make learning worthwhile and enjoyable, and it will also be an enriching learning experience. Now, this is the process of seeking and interpreting evidences for use by learners and their teachers to decide where the learners are in their learning and where they need to go and how. I'm just going to show you a little, a slideshow in fact, on how differentiated learning and differentiated assessing is so essential in our classrooms. Just have a look. This is quite self-explanatory. I'll just read it out. Maybe the print is small. Sorry. Once upon a time, the animals had a school. Their curriculum had to satisfy everyone. So they chose 4 subjects: running, climbing, flying, and swimming. All the animals studied all the subjects. Is that a problem? The duck was very good at swimming, better than the teacher in fact. He received passing grades at running and flying, but was hopeless at climbing. So they made him drop swimming so that he could practice climbing. After a while, he was only average at swimming. But But average is still acceptable, at least in school. Nobody worried much about it except the duck. The eagle was considered a troublemaker. In his climbing class, he beat everybody to the top of the tree, but he had his own way of getting there, and that was against the rules. He always had to stay after school and write "cheating is wrong" 500 times. This kept him from soaring, which he loved, but schoolwork comes first. The bear did badly. They said he was lazy, especially in winter. His best time was summer, but school wasn't open then. The zebra was absent a lot because the ponies made fun of his stripes, and this made him very sad. The kangaroo started out at the top of the racing class, but he became discouraged when told to move swiftly on all four legs like his other classmates. The fish quit school because he was bored. He was unable to do most of the subjects, but nobody understood that because they had never seen a fish. The squirrel got an A in climbing, but his flying teacher made him start from the ground up instead from the treetop down. His legs got so sore from practicing takeoffs that he began getting C's in climbing and D's in running. The bee was the biggest problem of all, so they sent him to Dr. Owl for testing. Dr. Owl said the bee's wings were too small for flying and that they were in the wrong place. The bee never saw Dr. Owl's report, so he just went ahead and flew anyway. Can we recognize them? The duck, the eagle, the bear, the zebra, the fish, the squirrel, the bee. The duck is a child who does well in math but poorly in English. He is given extra classes in English while his classmates are doing math. He loses his edge in math and does only passably well in English. The eagle is a child who is turned into a troublemaker because he has his own style of doing things. While he is not doing anything wrong, his behavior is seen as troublemaking for which he is punished. Who does not recognize the bear? The kid who does well in extracurricular activities and camps but just goes flat in academics. The zebra is the too heavy, too tall, too short, or self-conscious kid whose failure in school is due to a sense of social inadequacy. The kangaroo is the one who, instead of persevering, gives up and becomes the discouraged child whose future disappears because he was not appreciated. The fish is the child who requires special education and should not be in a regular classroom. The squirrel, unlike the duck that manages, becomes a failure. The bee is a child the school feels it just cannot deal with. Yet, he has enough motivation to do well, even though everyone thought he couldn't. Each child is a unique blend of talents, personality, and abilities. Effective teachers are always learning, studying, and adapting their approach for each child. I think an effective teacher should also, therefore, adapt design their and make their strategies in such a way that each child is also assessed as per their unique abilities, and not have the same size, and not think that the same size will fit everyone, and say have the same assessment pattern for everyone. Thank you very much.